It's week 8 of the college football season. Do we know anything? Like, genuinely, I mean, I sat here a few weeks ago, I was like, dude, Bama's incredible. And then Bama loses to Vandy, and they keep it close to South Carolina. And we're like, Tennessee, oh, they're going to be a college football playoff team. They lose to Arkansas, struggle with Florida. Like, there's a lot that we just quite frankly don't know. Some of this you charge it to the game of college football being the best sport on the face of the planet because it's so volatile. But also, I think we're in the middle of a very unique college football season. We're going to make our picks today for you on a wonderful Prediction Tuesday for week 8 of the college football season. As I mentioned, Prediction Tuesday, October 15th, 2024, last one on the face of the planet. It's stacked, man. Like, October, this college football season's October has really done a number for us here. Last week was one of the most hyped up college football weekends in a long, long time, and it lived up to that hype. Think about that for a second. October 19th now, it's going to pack a similar punch. You got Georgia, Texas in Austin. I mean, we've been pretty anti-college football conference realignment, but this is one of those times where you look at that matchup, you say it's a conference game. Okay, yeah, I could get used to that. Twist my arm. We have a traditional rivalry. We got Alabama, Tennessee, little third Saturday in October action. You got the battle for the boot with Arkansas and LSU. We got Miami going to Louisville. Again, not Louisville, Louisville. That'll be a good time. And you got Indiana, Nebraska. Hang on for a second. Indiana, Nebraska with college football playoff implications. Yes, that is where we are right now in 2024 in the 12-team playoff era. So we'll unpack all those, give you our takes and our predictions in those games. A couple other things I want us to touch on today. Will Howard and what he did in that game against Oregon. I think the last play is getting way too much traction on Twitter. The Twitter quarterbacks are out and about, three-step dropping all over the timeline and telling you what Will Howard should and shouldn't have done. I'm just telling you, I think dude's a baller. I think we learned a lot more from that game than maybe what some of the, again, Twitter quarterbacks would like to lead us to believe. And then Dan Lanning, speaking of that Oregon-Ohio State game, Andy and Ari talked about it this morning on their show a little bit. I want us to just kind of give our flowers to Dan Lanning for a second, or give him his flowers rather, and then I also want us to look in retrospect at what people were saying about Dan Lanning right around this time last year. So we remember now. We remember very, very vividly what was being said about him and what he hadn't done as a head coach on game day. So we'll talk about that as we do every single Tuesday, though. Accountability is your second best ability, right after availability, but we're glad to have y'all here. We'll talk about our hits and misses from the week that was. If you are just now finding this show, welcome. It's week 8 of the college football season. This is a show run by college football sickos for college football sickos. So subscribe to the YouTube channel, subscribe on all the podcast feed. I mean, get your family and friends to subscribe on the podcast feed on YouTube. It's just like, this is our place now. There's a lot of extracurriculars out there that talk about college football. Nothing to do with college football. It's hot takes, it's clickbait, it's traffic, it's all that. Like, I understand, but like that's not this show. And that's not throwing shade. I'm just trying to keep it with y'all. Keep it real with y'all. All right, so let's get to this here. The hits and misses from week 7 of the college football season. We hit on Kansas State and Colorado. Did not feel great about that one going into the game. Full transparency, wasn't sure how the Kansas State secondary would hold up. We said, hey, I think Kansas State is the more physical team. Think they're the more complete football team. They were. They proved it in that game. Shedeur Sanders is dealing the pill like a shady pharmacist. You don't have to buy a jersey to be, excited about what Colorado was doing, but just like appreciate what he's doing right now in college football, similar to what we said about Travis Hunter. Both those dudes, I think, are generational talents. But even with that being said, Kansas State, they are a Big 12 title contender, and they proved it, I believe, on the road against a good Colorado team. We missed on Oregon. Oregon, Ohio State, I said, hey, listen, I think Ohio State is going to have more ways to win that football game. I don't think the miss was so much on Ohio State and their ability to score. The offense scored north of 30. You should have a good chance to win. It was the defense, man, for Ohio State that was nowhere to be found. Like, Oregon went berserk. And we said this the week before, saying, hey, there were some mistakes in the red zone. In some ways, as bizarre as it is to say out loud, you're glad to have those mistakes out of the way before the big one against Ohio State. That was exactly what Oregon did. Dylan Gabriel sacked 0 times, did not make those costly red zone errors like he did in previous games. He was dealing over 340 yards on the day, and Oregon won that game, made a statement. Dan Lanning and his program, kind of a how do you like me now sort of win. Oregon, big-time win for them. We'll talk more about them a little bit later in the show. We said, hey, Tennessee and Florida, Texas and Oklahoma, probably going to be some weird things that happen in those games. Red River wasn't all that weird. I mean, Jesse Simonton and I talked about it on Thursday, and he actually hit this on the head. Tennessee, Florida was where it got weird. In Tennessee, we're going to predict your game with Alabama here in just a little bit. But, yeah, I mean, Florida, for them to be in the position they're in, I think they're a lot better than folks like to give credit for. I think we all think about the A&M game and the Miami game, and they are what they are. Again, I don't think Billy Napier is going to be your head coach next year. That would surprise me. But things got weird in that game. How much do you take from that game when you try to assess Tennessee, Alabama? We'll talk about it in a little bit, but things got weird in that game, took overtime, and yeah, again, I don't know what to say. Things got weird. We told you they'd get weird. They got weird. God bless college football. Last one here. We missed on, pun intended here, Ole Miss. Shame on me. Shame on me because I picked a team to go into Death Valley at night and beat a team and a head coach. Brian Kelly has never lost at night in Death Valley. That's on me, hand up. The thing that sticks out to me about that game, yes, the defense bosses up quite a bit against a good Ole Miss offense. How about Garrett Nussmeier throwing the ball over 50 times? And the play that sticks out, we said it yesterday on our Who Won the Weekend video that's on the On3 YouTube channel. It's 4th and 5 in the game. Like, if you don't get this, things get very interesting. Like, you don't force overtime. We'll say that much. So what do you call on 4th and 5? Quick game, something just to kind of pick up the yardage you need? No. Joe Sloan calls verts for his quarterback. You know how much trust you have to have in your offense and your quarterback specifically to call verts in that situation? Told me everything I need to know about how that team feels about Garrett Nussmeier. And yet again, LSU, a gritty outfit. We missed on Ole Miss, and LSU doing what LSU does at night in Death Valley. So it is what it is. All right, let's get to these predictions now, man. We got a phenomenal one. This is one of the gifts of conference realignment. We're not big on conference realignment, but this is going to be an absolute just college football extravagant. I mean, a college football sicko's dream right here. Georgia going to Texas. Texas favored by 3.5, 7:30 Eastern. DKR, ABC, assuming this is the Herb Street and Fowler game. These are, in my opinion, right now, two of the top 4 best teams in college football. Whatever the rankings say, they say. But I'm telling you, I think Georgia, if you were to put them on the field with any team ahead of them, I'd be very curious to see what that line is. For Texas, man, if you win this game, what else are people going to say about you? And I mean that in more of a rhetorical sense, like what else can they say about you? Because look at the resume for Texas if they go out and beat what has been more or less the standard in college football over the course of the last 3 to 4 years. You beat Michigan at Michigan. Okay, check that box. Michigan, what are they really? I don't know, but you beat a team with a lot of NFL players on their defense and made it look pretty cake. All right, great. You have Georgia come to your place, and everyone's saying, well, Texas, are they ready for the SEC? Can they handle it? I know they beat Bama, but like that was a one-time thing. Can they beat Kirby and company? If they do that, what else are we saying about Georgia? Or what else are we saying about Texas in relation to how they would look against a good Georgia team? I think it's worth noting, and I think it's probably needs to be said that if Texas beats Georgia, I don't know who they're losing to the rest of the way. And the schedule isn't easy, but if you beat Georgia, I have no more reservations about what Texas is. Let's make that clear. Now for Georgia, this is a chance, I think, for them to kind of set the record straight on who they are. Because I went into the year and I said, I think Georgia's the best team in college football. I think they still have the potential to be the best team in college football. They have not played anywhere near their potential. I think the folks in Athens, Georgia would tell you that. I think Kirby Smart would tell you that. If you go out and beat Texas at their place with everything that's being said about Texas to this point in the year, I think you clear the air and you let everybody know, hey, okay, listen, hey, I understand that, we looked a certain way against Bama. I understand we looked a certain way against Kentucky, but like, make no mistake, we are still the big dog in this sport. All right? I'm curious to see if Georgia beats Texas, where they would be in the polls. I doubt they'd be number 1, but I think they'd have a case to be number 1. I'm not so sure we wouldn't put them at number 1 in our own rankings. Again, I'm not saying we would, but I'm not saying that we know what to do exactly with the Dogs if they were to beat Texas. So what's going to determine this game? That's what we're here for, right? The matchup that I am watching most closely is Texas and their wide receivers against Georgia's DBs. Because Georgia's DBs, man, have not looked anything like we've come to expect that Georgia secondary to look like in the past, right? Just call a spade a spade. It's been disappointing. The Alabama game is evidence of that. The Mississippi State game is evidence of that. In both those situations, the opposing quarterback went for over 300 yards. Now, Mississippi State, you probably treat that evaluation with a grain of salt because Mississippi State is kind of an air raid-esque sort of team. But make no mistake, if Texas's wide receivers can do to Georgia what Alabama's wide receivers did, it's going to be a blowout. Okay, and maybe that's a little bit hyperbolic of me to say, but I think it could get that way. Because if Texas jumps on Georgia the way that Alabama jumped on Georgia, Sark's not letting up a 28-point lead. He's not. And that's not me throwing shade at DeBoer. I'm just telling you, Sark is too good of an offensive coordinator, and they are too good at adjusting. I think that defense is too good to where they will let you back up for air. So Isaiah Bond, as of right now, still waiting to see what he's listed on with that injury report. If he's able to go, that is a massive, massive variable for the Texas offense. He is their explosive threat. They got a lot of other guys that can burn a little bit, but like if Isaiah Bond can go, that changes the complexion of your offense if you don't have him at a elite level of play, if that makes sense. The other thing I think we should notice here, when it comes to what they have in that wide receiver room, obviously you're better if Isaiah Bond can go. We just established that. But what concerns me when I compare what Alabama has and what Texas has in terms of how they match up against Georgia, I think Texas, while they don't have like a Ryan Williams level player, Isaiah Bond's in that conversation, I suppose. Ryan Wingo's a stud. I'd be surprised, quite frankly, if someone went for in the range of 170 against this Georgia secondary. They have so much quantity when it comes to their playmakers. Like, I don't know who you give extra attention to. Is it Isaiah Bond? Is it Matthew Golden? Is it Wingo? Is it Bolden? Is it Gunnar Helm, the tight end? Like, I think there's so many guys that can hurt you to where if you're Georgia, they're a man coverage kind of football team. I don't know if that's the play this time. I don't. And I'm not telling you that I know more about defensive football than Glenn Schumann and Kirby Smart, but I'm looking down the line here at what Georgia has done in man coverage against some of these football teams, and they've struggled. And so as much as we talk about the secondary for Georgia, the thing that I'm looking at here is, does Georgia find a way to disrupt Quinn Ewers? Because I think as much as we want to talk about the issues in the secondary, Georgia's got to find a way to get home here. And I'm not telling you they've had issues. I think Georgia's been pretty vanilla with the kind of pressures they've brought. Kirby Smart has said as much. But I think in this game, you got to find a way to get to Ewers. Because if you leave your secondary on an island in man coverage and you're not able to, play a certain level or certain caliber of pass defense, Quinn Ewers is going to pick you apart. He's too experienced. The receivers are too good. The offense is too dynamic. Sark is and will going to go after you. Make no mistake about it. That's who he is. That's what he's proven he will do. Georgia's got to find a way to disrupt Quinn Ewers. So in this game, we'll see where Mykel Williams is when it comes to his level of effectiveness in this game. And obviously we'll learn more about that as the week goes on. But that's something I'm a little bit concerned about here for Georgia. Because, and I don't mean to just harp on all the things that Georgia's concerned about here, but we'll get to them in a second. If Texas can connect on the jaw, if they can hit those deep shots early, because I expect them to have a similar game plan as they had against Michigan in this game, a lot of horizontal in the pass game and a lot of vertical in the pass game early. They're going to test that secondary. When that happens, as a defense, if they have success, you have to adjust. If I'm giving up, 10 or against Alabama, Georgia was allowing 11 yards of pass. If I'm giving up that number in the passing game, then my defense has to adjust. Essentially, I would have to give, I believe, extra resources to the pass game. So when that happens, well, then Steve Sarkisian can sit back and run the football. So all that's to say, I have a very difficult time piecing together a formula for Georgia defensively, short of something we haven't seen yet to this season, for them to be able to slow down this offense. Now, it's also worth noting for Quinn Ewers, he did not look great against Oklahoma. And Oklahoma's a good defense. I think personnel-wise, Georgia across the board is probably better. I don't know that you can be so, I don't want to say one-dimensional, but I don't think you can just lean on the run game exclusively and find a way to beat Georgia in this football game, if that makes sense. I think you do have to be multiple. So for Quinn Ewers now, you had the one game to calibrate, a little bit rusty from the time you missed. Got to be dialed in here. Biggest spot, the big dog in the SEC, more or less coming to your place. You got to find a way to not leave money on the table. We can't miss, over the middle on that crossing route and have it go to the safety. We can't miss Isaiah Bond when he's open downfield. It's got to be surgical, okay? If it is, good things happen. If not, Georgia Usually if you give them some margin, bad things happen for you, all right? We'll say that much. Now, I think that what Georgia is offensively, to this point in the year at least, they've been pretty straightforward about it. They are going to go as Carson Beck goes. And I think for all of us as the college football public, it's taken a second to totally understand or at least reimagine who Georgia is now, because even under Stetson Bennett, they were a football team that was pass to run, right? Like even with him back at quarterback, they would throw the football downfield and then run the football. They have become even more so in that vein, I believe. They're throwing the football 56% of the time. 56% of the time. Like they're not necessarily a team that you worry about quite as much with pounding the rock. Now, can they still do that? I believe so. But with how they're dinged up on the offensive line, no Tate Ratledge, dinged up in the backfield, like they are going to go even more so than they were before as Carson Beck goes. Like there is not a game that Georgia wins here if Carson Beck does not bring his A-plus game to the table. Now, if he does, all bets are off, because Carson Beck, I'll say this very clearly, he is good enough to win this football game for you. He is, right? He's special. There's a reason why the NFL scouts love that dude, okay? He is good enough to pick that Texas defense apart if he has time and if he's on. Because if he's on, man, like I said, he's one of the best quarterbacks in the country. But going back to what I was saying about the Georgia system, this is not like a Georgia, bully ball, move it up front, get the ball out to Brock Bowers. Like I think personnel-wise, on the perimeter, you have probably a higher level across the board of skill player. But I don't see that first-round draft pick in a Brock Bowers or an NFL kind of player that can take over like a Ladd McConkey. You need somebody to step up. Dominique Lovett looking at you. Dylan Bell looking at you. This is that game now where we need your best in the biggest spot to win this football game. So here's what I'm curious about. I just mentioned all the matchup things, and quite frankly, on paper, you got to feel pretty good if you're Texas. Defensively, I don't think you're at a deficiency. I think you're good enough on the defensive line. I think you're good enough to get after Beck. I think your receivers should win here. Like, you feel really good about a lot of the matchups if you're Texas. But here's what I'm curious about. Georgia has gone through, I believe, a little bit greater resistance test than Texas has to this point. And I'm not trying to downplay the Michigan win. I just think we've seen now as the year has progressed, Michigan offensively, like, they're on their third quarterback. If that doesn't tell us something, it should. It's very difficult, I think, to flip the switch to play at a certain level that you need to play at to beat Georgia. And Georgia, I think, has to be, to use a weightlifting metaphor here, they've stepped under that heavy bar. They've put the resistance on their back. They've had to play Alabama and gone back and forth and played to the fourth quarter. Like, Texas hasn't had that. And it's not any fault of Texas's, but I do think, like I just said, it's tough to ramp up the intensity in a spot like this and be able to fire on all cylinders and play at the level you need to play at to beat a team as talented as Georgia. We just saw it this past weekend in Ohio State, Oregon. Ohio State, on paper, probably was the better team than Oregon, but that wasn't the way it worked out on the field. Why? Oregon, 1, came to play. 2, they were there from the jump. And 3, I don't think that Ohio State not having to play 4 quarters, I think that impacted them. I think that hurt them. I don't think that did Ohio State any services. So in this game, what does it come down to? As much as I mentioned the matchups, I do think that these are 2 of the best coaches in the sport. It's not really a hot take. Anytime you have great coaches, they're going to do, I believe, a good job of taking away your fastball. To put it another way, I think they're going to force you to play left-handed. So what do you have in the bag if I take away your strength? For Kirby Smart, maybe that's taking away their pass game. For Steve Sarkisian, maybe that's finding a way to limit Georgia in the pass game. I think if that's the game that we end up seeing, I think Texas has more available to them. I think Steve Sarkisian and the way that he schemes up the offense is going to give Georgia problems. I think Georgia is still uber talented. I think they're one of the best teams in the country. However, I don't trust that secondary. I don't. I'd like to, but I think if Georgia wins this football game, it would take something defensively against one of the best pass games in the country that we have not seen to this point in the year. So for that reason, I think it's close. I think it's back and forth. I think Texas has more ways to win. I think they get it done in Austin. Final score, Texas 31, Georgia 27. I would not touch the spread. Based on that score, we have Texas winning and Texas covering with that 3.5 points. But again, I wouldn't touch it. I would if I'm taking anything, it's money line one way or the other. So let's rock and let's roll, baby. That's what we like in this game. This show, The Hard Count, brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks. Got a Prize Picks play for you in our Alabama-Tennessee prediction, so stay tuned for that one. They tell us to recap for you what we did the weekend before. I keep saying it, and I'm not just saying it to get y'all to sign up because, I mean, honestly, like, that's what they're looking at, just full transparency. Code HARDCOUNT, $5 in lineups when you play, gets you $50 in promo funds. But, like, if I was missing, I would tell y'all. Last year, we missed a lot. And I told y'all every single Tuesday, I guess it was, hey, we missed on this, missed on that, missed on this. Y'all, that basket is looking very wide open for us right now. The play that we had, Travion Henderson, the more in his rush yards, that hit. Dylan Gabriel, more than 1.5 passing touchdowns, that also hit. Both hit with ease. I'm just saying, I don't know how long this heater is going to last for, but I don't see any signs of slowing down. So fade or follow, but again, code HARDCOUNT, $5 in lineups, gets you $50 in promo funds when you sign up over at prizepicks.com. So I don't know if the interns are still setting the lines. I don't know what's going on, but I would encourage y'all to get on board. We're having a good time over there. Speaking of having a good time, man, it's going to be a good time on Saturday, 3:30 Eastern, ABC, Neyland Stadium. Alabama, 2.5-point favorite right now, going to Tennessee. So Tennessee is a home dog. Interesting. Very, very interesting. This was a tough game to break down, to be real with y'all. It's a tough matchup because I'm still trying to figure out who both these teams are. Like, I'm watching Alabama, South Carolina last week, and I'm like, did the Georgia game even happen? Like, where's the Alabama team we saw for 4 quarters in Tuscaloosa? Or I guess 2.5 quarters, 2 quarters if you want to be real. Where's that team at? I haven't seen them since then. They lost to Vanderbilt, made it far too interesting against South Carolina. Like, South Carolina's a good football team, but for Alabama, as good as they have played, I don't know who they are right now, and that's concerning. For Tennessee, sort of the same deal. The Oklahoma game happens, and we're like, Tennessee, thinking playoff, vibes are high. Lose to Arkansas, okay, let's get back right. Because Florida, God bless them, not great defensively. It was a very, very gettable Florida defense. And Tennessee, once again, offensively, kind of struggled to look the way you would hope they would look if you're a Tennessee fan and what you expect from this Josh Heupel offense. So the last time we had Alabama in Knoxville, we found out that goalposts indeed do not float. Good to know. The plays are there if you're Tennessee. I will say that. I think there are some plays to be had downfield that Nico Iamaleava and this receiving corps just quite frankly aren't capitalizing on. If there's a time to get right, man, this is the time. This is the time. Because if you can beat Alabama, if you're Tennessee, one, the rivalry in itself, third Saturday in October, like you get that dub, the vibes would be incredible in Knoxville. We've seen what can happen when Tennessee beats Bama in Knoxville. It's a very, very, very tough scene for everyone that's trying to clean up afterwards in Knoxville. It's a very, very good vibe for everyone that's celebrating that one, all right? So I'll say that. Maybe as importantly, the Arkansas loss. If you beat Alabama, you're able to kind of delete that one from the folder. Not that it doesn't matter, but I think when it comes to that whole college football playoff conversation, the talk going into the year was always, can you split Bama and Georgia? If you can, great. Now you might need to do a little bit more than just split them, but you'll take this one against Bama if you can get it, and it would obviously help optics with the Arkansas loss. For Alabama, here's my concern. It's twofold, and we said it the Sunday after, so another reason to be subscribed here. The first concern is that Vanderbilt, I believe, exposed some things with how to beat Alabama, and we all saw that. South Carolina, I believe, followed a similar blueprint. The thing is, South Carolina has better players than Vanderbilt. Now, South Carolina did not hit the shots that Vanderbilt hit to ultimately win the football game, but the same plays are there. The other concern, the second concern for me, is that Alabama, historically, with Nick Saban now, which, again, he's not the head coach there anymore, so we all understand that. Historically, when Bama would lose a game, they would turn around and just kick the teeth in of whoever they had next on the schedule, right? Like that was kind of that was their MO. Bama loses to Vandy and then just ekes out a win over South Carolina. So I think if you're concerned as an Alabama fan, that's extremely fair. I also think it's extremely fair to remember that this is a really good Alabama football team that took it to Georgia for 2 quarters and then second half happened. It is what it is. All that's to say, for both Bama and Tennessee, I'm very curious to see where the psyche is for both these teams because I think the last couple of games for each side, I don't know this to be true, but I think it's fair to wonder where the confidence level is at. Because you lose to Vandy, everyone and their mama goes to Twitter and they have their own take and they're going after Bama and DeBoer and whatever. Like, I know you put on the blinders that you try to block it out as best you can. It's impossible to not at least hear the echoes of it. Everyone has a phone. Everyone's on Twitter. Everyone within that locker room understands now what's being said about this football team. And that was a football team that came out against South Carolina, quite frankly, that played like they had heard a lot of things said about them. In a negative way. For Tennessee, kind of the same deal. The Florida game is tough to take stock of because the Florida game is always weird for Tennessee, but you do sort of start to look back at your season. You're like, okay, well, the Oklahoma game, if Jackson Arnold and that Oklahoma offense can capitalize on turnovers, maybe we have a different situation going into this game in itself. Maybe we have 2 losses. I don't know. But I do just think you're a little bit uneasy. So psychologically, where these both are at is going to be very, very interesting going into this game. This game to me feels a little bit, I don't want to say simplistic because college football is never simple, but there's 2 matchups, 2 areas of opportunity where I'm just looking at both these teams and saying, okay, who's going to go win? Someone's got to go win this matchup, and that matchup will have a ripple effect across the game and dictate, I think, who ends up winning this one. For Tennessee, it's the wide receiving core. God bless Alabama and their secondary. They have not been great. Even against Georgia, like Carson Beck went for 4 bills, and he had one of the worst games of his career when it came to turnovers. Ultimately, they made the play to win the football game, but Vandy took advantage of the secondary. South Carolina took advantage of the secondary. Now, the secondary has been opportunistic enough to win football games, but like if you don't think there's plays out there, we're not watching the same thing. And Tennessee's wide receiving core, we went out there in the spring, saw them practice. They got some dudes now. I'm waiting for them to emerge. Chris Brazzell, the transfer from Tulane, I think he's much better than how he's played. Squirrel White, same deal. Brew McCoy, same deal. Dante Thornton, he's the guy I'm watching closely because I think his skill set of size and speed, the blend of those two, he could be a guy that pops in a very big way in a spot like this. So excited to see that. Now for Alabama, that front 7, go win. Go win because the Tennessee offensive line, I don't know if they're bad per se, but they're very gettable. And if you're able to get the Tennessee offensive line and rattle a young quarterback, okay, we could have the snowball effect here. You got Nico Iamaleava seeing ghosts, maybe some uncharacteristic turnovers. Multi-syllable word there. Just saying, it gets a little bit tricky. Gets a little bit tricky for Tennessee, and things start to get left quick, fast, and in a hurry, especially if that equates to turnovers and equates to extra possessions for A1 Jalen Milroe. Now, I fully expect Alabama defensively to follow the blueprint set by Oklahoma, Arkansas, and now Florida. And that blueprint essentially is like, hey, we're going to put our defensive backs right around, call it 7-ish yards, 6-ish yards, basically soft coverage. We're going to dare Nico to beat us. We're going to load the box, say, okay, run the football if you want to. We got numbers. We're going to give you a look that says throw the ball. Can you beat us? Right? If you're Alabama's front 7, you can stop the run. That's how that would happen. Same thing we just said for the wide receivers for Tennessee. Like, if you're getting that look, you're getting soft coverage, you're getting a loaded box, okay, there's green grass to go win. So that's where this gets really interesting to me. Now, this is a spot, I think, for Nico. He's taken a lot of heat, I think, as the quarterback at Tennessee. Anytime you're the quarterback for a place like Tennessee, of course there's going to be some things said about you and said about how you play and all that. It's not just Nico, all right? It's not. I mentioned the offensive line. I mentioned the wide receivers. Like, it's not just a Nico issue here at Tennessee right now. You got to get some guys that go win. Now, Dylan Sampson has been, like I said, he has been hooping so far to this point in the year. Got to support Nico as best you can in this game and try and offset that defense. If you can force a little bit more real estate downfield, that's always a good thing. But I do think when you look at the ways that Alabama has lost against Vanderbilt, I say the ways they've lost, the ways they've made it close. The Vanderbilt one was a loss, but the game against South Carolina, I think defensively, there were spots where you played poorly enough to lose, and it was the quarterbacks just being playmakers. And there's nothing really technical to break down there, but like Diego Pavia and Lenora Sellers, there was a lot of times where they got to that second play. I think Nico Iamaleava is as good an athlete, if not better, than both those cats. He can hurt you with his legs. So I'm curious game plan-wise here how Josh Heupel approaches it. I think maybe this is a spot where you just try and get Nico into more rhythm. Now, how do you do that? Josh Heupel and Nico Iamaleava have got to have that conversation and feel good about their plan going forward. Because if it's me, I would say, okay, let's get some more design quarterback run If we're not calling it against Bama, when are we calling it? Like, I get you want to keep number 8 healthy as much as possible, and you don't do anything stupid with how you use him, but I do think you have to, in some way, shape, or form, get him involved and make him a threat in the run game. Vanderbilt has proven that's something you can do against this Alabama defense. I would also do things to build his confidence in the pass game. Whether that's taking that soft coverage they're giving you, whether that's taking some quick games, some easy wins in the pass game. Get him in rhythm. If he gets into a flow, Tennessee has a very good chance to win this football game. Now, here's the thing I'm watching when it comes to Alabama offensively. Jalen Milroe is sort of that trump card you just have to keep an eye on in this game. Like, he is so good to where the matchups might favor Tennessee in this spot. There might be plays for Tennessee on offense here, and like they might be able to have this matchup, and like all those things are nice. But if Jalen Milroe just says, you know what, today I'm him, that could be the game. That could be the analysis there for you. Hey, Tennessee, you played great, but number 4 had a day. It is what it is. And I think when we look at Jalen Milroe, the thing that we're watching here is what he does with his legs against this Tennessee front 7. Now, the thing that just breaks your heart and broke, I think, everyone's heart that's a college football fan, period, yesterday, Keenan Peely, he's done, which I absolutely hate. Absolutely hate that for Tennessee, hate that for college football. That is a massive loss when it comes to trying to slow down Jalen Milroe in the run game, because that's where this whole thing, I think, flows from if you're Alabama offensively. If Jalen Milroe can get the run game going, whether it be designed or whether it be ad-lib, at that point, Alabama is a step ahead of you because you're trying to adjust to what Jalen Milroe can do. You're trying to figure out a way, okay, do we have an extra spy? Do we commit different resources in the pass game to try and, roll down and stop him? And when that happens, that's when Kalen DeBoer has you. That's when he can adjust and have plays downfield. That's where Kalen DeBoer is extra dangerous because Jalen Milroe is cooking. So in this spot now, with no Keenan Peely, like James Pierce, going to be a top 15, top 10 pick probably next year for Tennessee. This is the spot where we got to have you stunt here, brother. Like this is the spot where you boss up in a very massive way. Because I promise you, NFL scouts are going to pull up the games against your best competition. They're going to watch the Alabama game and how you played against one of the best, most dynamic athletes in college football in Jalen Milroe. So if James Pierce can go do what South Carolina did against Alabama, and they can get 4 sacks and set up, third in passing, third in limited playbook, good things are happening for Tennessee. So when it comes to our pick in this one, whenever we have a spread like this, the filter I run it through when it comes down to who we're going to pick, what is harder to believe? Is it harder to believe that Nico Iamaleava can get right against a very gettable Alabama defense at the crib, or is it harder to believe that Alabama is still one of the elites in college football and just hasn't played like it the last couple of weeks? To me, I'm going to go ahead and believe what I've seen to this point. Because even factoring in Tennessee's offensive success early on in the year, I have not seen the Tennessee offense look how they need to look to beat Alabama for the better part of the last 3 weeks. Now, Alabama, they've got their own issues defensively. Don't get it twisted. But for whatever reason, man, we dunk on Kalen DeBoer for playing South Carolina close. Kalen DeBoer, for whatever reason, his teams just win close games. They were 8-0 last year at Washington in one-score games. I think that Alabama wins this football game close. I think the final score is 27-24. I just think that Alabama has too much firepower offensively. I trust Jalen Milroe too much in this spot. I think they get it done. Now, with prize picks, a couple of plays for you here. I'm going to take less on Nico Iamaleava's passing yards. I'm going to take less on Jalen Milroe's rushing yards. I think that Tennessee does get to him a little bit. Nico Iamaleava's passing yards is 199.5. Jalen Milroe's rush yards is 47.5. So I'll take the less on both of those. Could see this being a little bit rock fighty. Again, 27-24. I'm taking the Tide to win a close one now in Knoxville. Now, if that happens, the sky is not falling in Knoxville. Josh Heupel is not a bad coach. Offensively, they are not anemic. They've got some things that they got to figure out. And right now, I'm rolling with the Tide there. So it is what it is. So on this show, we talk a lot about, you've heard me say this many times during the Open, like, hey, we're not in it for clickbait. We don't do traffic. We don't, we're not in this whole deal for like the thumbnail culture, if you will. We're not just about this for for having something incendiary to say to show up on your Twitter timeline. And I think at this point in the year, we need to install a new scheme. Teams do this whenever they're playing a different opponent. You add different things to the game plan. And for us, I want us to install together the clickbait defense. All right? When we see the clickbait, we got to call it out. We identify it. Make sure we're all on the same page. We get aligned, and we play the correct defense against it. The clickbait we got to defend against right now is folks taking the Ohio State game and shouting from the mountaintops, hey, told y'all. Hey, told you, Will Howard, not the guy. Can't get it done. Ohio State, so close, no cigar. That's just who they are. Listen, if you have issues with Ohio State from the Oregon game, I hear you. That defense, I thought, and still believe actually, is full of NFL players. They did not play like it. I mean, you tip your hat to Will Stein, tip your hat to Dylan Gabriel. They balled out, and they did what they did. But the idea that Will Howard is the reason why you lost that football game, because he slid at the end of the game and clock ran out. Lazy take. Clickbait take. You're just trying to feed your own narrative, and more power to you, but I'm just telling you, we are going to play clickbait defense against that. Because what was said all offseason long, from us, from other people, if Will Howard can play at a high level, Ohio State is a national championship level team. Will Howard is going to get dunked on from Twitter quarterbacks for sliding. It is what it is. But look at what he did in this football game. Over 300 yards passing, 3 total touchdowns, no interceptions, completed 80% of his passes. The last play is an effort play gone wrong, like Chargers of the game. If you really want to make a definitive statement on Will Howard because he tried to make a play to get his team in field goal range and didn't get down quick enough, and that's your major gripe, give me a break, dude. Like, just we're not going to get aligned here. Because if Will Howard goes for over 300 yards and plays at that level consistently, Ohio State won't just be in the college football playoff. They're going to have a chance to go on a real good run in the college football playoff, and I think show up in Atlanta. So the idea that Will Howard's the problem based on one play, what are we doing here? Like, what are we talking about? I'll say this too. People now going back to their old takes and saying, well, hey, I told you, man, he's just Kyle McCord 2.0. I love Kyle McCord with every fiber of my being. We have adopted Syracuse as our own program on this show. But if you believe that Kyle McCord can make some of those plays that Will Howard made in that game, I would ask you to show me where. The play that sticks out most specifically to me, play breaks down in the red zone, Will Howard scrambles right, gets out of trouble, and throws a laser on the run to Jeremiah Smith. Again, I love Kyle McCord. He's not making that play. Will Howard showed up in a big spot here. That was the knock against Kyle McCord. Even against Penn State, didn't play his best football last year to Kyle McCord. We were there. Played well enough to win. I don't know that it was, exactly what you would have hoped he would do in the big spot. The Michigan game is his Michigan game, and that's a big reason I think why we're having this discussion now with Ohio State having a new quarterback. But Will Howard is not the problem. He has never been the problem. I think we got a question answered actually with Will Howard doing what he did against Oregon in that football game and balling out how he balled. So clickbait defense, want to make sure we're all aligned. Everyone make sure we have our right assignment and alignment and technique. The clickbait defense has been installed, and we are defending against that take that Will Howard is somehow the problem because of one spot there where he maybe should have slid a little bit earlier. Give me a break. Effort play. So, hey, appreciate everyone dialed in live right now. Make sure you like the video. Make sure you have subscribed to the On3 YouTube channel. Got a couple more predictions here for you. Let's go out to Bloomington, Indiana. I've been to Bloomington one time, and it is, to me at least, like the archetype for a Big Ten college town. Big Noon's going to be there. Nebraska is also going to be there, going to Indiana as a 6.5-point dog. This is a wonderful thing about the new era of college football. We have our own gripes about the playoff and realignment, whatever. Not the time for it. Y'all, we got Nebraska and Indiana playing each other with college football playoff implications on the line here. That's a beautiful thing. It's a very beautiful thing because we've said throughout the entire era that we're in right now, the 12-team playoff, the entire season, hey, 10-2 from the Big Ten should feel optimistic at worst about your chances, confident at best about getting in the dance. Nebraska, 10-2. They only have one loss right now. If they win this game, you got Ohio State, got to go to Iowa. I guess you have USC, but all those games outside of Ohio State should feel pretty winnable. 10-2 feels pretty attainable. Who would have thought? Who would have thought Nebraska's in that playoff conversation? Indiana, same deal. They're undefeated right now. They got Michigan and Ohio State on the schedule. But if they win this game, is it unfathomable to see Indiana sitting there at 11-1 at the end of the regular season? I'm just saying, this game is one that I don't know that we all had circled going into the year for obvious reasons based on the over-under win total of both football teams with college football playoff implications. But gosh dang it, let's go. Gosh dang it, this is awesome. Again, national stage, Joel Klatt, Gus Johnson, little big noon action. Let's start with Indiana, man. Whenever you ask people about Indiana and just the overall aura, if you will, of that team, one word keeps coming up: confident. I texted someone that's very close to both these teams and said, hey, there's a certain swagger that Indiana plays with. And I think that comes from their head coach, and Curt Cignetti. Like, they believe in themselves. They're not worried about what anybody else is saying. They feel like they are the big dog. That's dangerous. It's dangerous to play a team that has that kind of confidence because, quite frankly, it doesn't matter whatever the matchup is, doesn't matter whatever the other team has. If you believe in what you have in-house and you play to the level of your belief, more often than not, good things happen. So I'm not telling you that you should just have blind confidence. I'm not saying that, but Indiana, quite frankly, they've earned the right to be confident now. They're undefeated. Indiana right now going to have, I have a good friend that went to Indiana, the biggest game in the last, 5 years maybe? Maybe more than that. Indiana, having Nebraska come to town here, Big Noon come to town, this is the massive, massive spot. So if you're confident and you think you're built like that, this is your chance now to prove it with the eyes of the nation watching that you are, in fact, like that. And I can't wait to watch it. Nebraska now, this, so those of y'all that don't know, I had a chance to, for a cup of coffee, be on a Matt Rule coached football team when he was at Baylor. And knowing what I know about him, this is going to be one of those games that he has his team just frothing at the mouth. Hey, you're 6.5-point dog. They're ranked. They're undefeated. This is the game that just has Matt Rule special, to me at least, written all over it. So what's going to determine this game, man? It sounds a little bit dumb, but I honestly think that this may come down to just the fundamentals for Nebraska defensively. They're going to play that 3-3-5 defense. It's going to, I think, align fairly well with the Indiana spread. But overall, it's great to align to a certain degree. But at the end of the day, you got to make plays. Got to make plays. More specifically, Indiana does a great job finding the matchup they like and then picking on it and getting their guy in space. So Nebraska, man, to put it simply, got to tackle. Got to find a way to get dudes on the ground. That is what it comes down to here. Kurt Rourke has been playing at such a high level to transfer from Ohio, from Action Wednesday nights to Saturday afternoons. He is now 73% on the year completion percentage. That's stupid. 14 touchdowns, only 2 picks. The run-pass ratio for Indiana, when you check their numbers, I think is a little bit deceiving. I think they want to be a little bit more of a pass-happy offense. They have 33 attempts in each of their last 2 games. Can Nebraska play honest up front and then give the proper attention to the pass game in the secondary? Because if it's a situation where Indiana is able to get something rolling on the ground and you have to, for, using the verbiage we use around here, be dishonest, meaning you add another player into the box to stop the run, that's going to favor Kurt Rourke. He's going to pick that apart. Now, on Nebraska's side of things, this is the game to me where you reiterate maybe why Dylan Raiola is your quarterback. And I don't mean to say this in the sense of hey, you take the training wheels off, because to be real, I think the training wheels have been off for Dylan Raiola for some time. But in this spot, I do think maybe you just throw him the keys a little bit more than you have, and you say, all right, this, you're our guy for a reason. You add that extra gear to the offense, we're going to go as you go here. Because for him now, it's start number 7, both teams coming off a bye, and Dylan Raiola going berserk might be what this game requires. Indiana scoring 41 points a game offensively. All right, they are more than likely going to have their fair share of say on what that scoreboard says. They're going to get in the end zone. Even with how good I think that Tony White defense is, I'd be surprised if they just totally lock down Indiana. So what does that mean? It means pressure shifts back to Nebraska, which was anemic a year ago offensively, and now have brand new life with them, with Dylan Raiola and those weapons out on the perimeter. This is the game where you got to go get it. Dylan Raiola, you're a guy for a reason. You're the leader of this team for a reason. As a true freshman, you came to Nebraska for a reason, for games like this. National spot, ranked team on the other side, on the road, go get it done. And again, that sounds a little bit like motivational and pep talky, but I think that's probably the approach here if you're Nebraska. I'm not saying they abandon the run, but I am saying, like, Dylan Raiola, we're going to let you spin it this game, all right? Go get it. Go get it. Now, here's the eyebrow raiser for me a little bit. I said this in the Texas-Georgia game. I feel the same way about this Nebraska-Indiana game. It is very difficult to have a low level of resistance throughout the course of your season through no fault of your own, and then have to immediately ramp up and bring your best against a similar level of roster talent opponent. That has been Indiana to this point in the year. All right, like I'm not trying to dunk on Northwestern, but like you go back and watch that Northwestern game, it was back and forth quite a bit. Like Indiana didn't ever really pull away until the fourth quarter. Nebraska, they've had some resistance here. The Illinois game, they lost that game. And you never say a loss is a good thing, but I do think that's actually going to serve them well in this spot. So what's harder to believe? Nebraska and their defense play up to the level they need to beat Indiana in that high-flying offense, or that Indiana is able to play a better level of opponent and go in with no warm-up, lift heavy, to keep with that metaphor of lifting weights and keep from breaking stride, and they just find a way to beat Nebraska at home. This game, to me, I said it before, I'll say it again, it has Matt Rhule special written all over it. I think he's going to have this team dialed into the nth degree. Nebraska's 6.5-point dog. I think Nebraska's the more talented football team. I think Nebraska's the better football team. I think Nebraska is the further along football team. I think they beat Indiana in Bloomington. I think it's close, but obviously we're taking Nebraska to win. So with that 6.5 points being given to Nebraska, we will take them to cover. And I think the Cornhuskers set up a very interesting matchup there the rest of the way with the games they have left. And the college football playoff conversation, I don't know if we're picking Nebraska to make the 12-team dance, but I do think that discussion gets a lot more juice to it. So again, we'll take Nebraska to get a massive win on the road, big noon kick, and the vibes are immaculate in Lincoln upon their return. Have to believe that. Have to believe that. So that's the world we're living in right now, baby. The world we're living in where Nebraska, Indiana has college football playoff implications. How about it, man? How about it? I see Cody Belair in the chat. Yo, Cody Belair, one of the best in the business. Part of the scouting and rankings here for us at On 3. He says, do the Big Red bounce back this week against Bucknell? It's a tough loss on national television to online accredited school in Cambridge, Massachusetts, known as Harvard, on ESPN2 last week. It is what it is. I do think the Big Red bounce back, Cody. Big Red bounce back against Bucknell. No idea what the spread is. Go ahead and book it. Dan Swanstrom got the boys ready to play. Another little prediction we'll sprinkle in there. Big Red by 1,000, okay? So go ahead and book that. Speaking of predictions, we got a couple more here for you. Miami going to Louisville. Again, not Louisville, Louisville. Miami 4.5-point favorite. Noon Eastern, ABC. A little Joe Tessitore, Jordan Rogers on the call. How about that? A little Bachelor action for you from Jordan Rogers. Louisville, if you're going to bounce back, if you're going to restabilize what your season is, this is the game. Like the time is now to draw a line in the sand. You have lost 2 of your last 3, but if you beat Miami, okay, hey, etch a sketch, shake that thing up, we start over, fudge it, we ball, to put it simply. Like a win like this can be like a good nap. You just view your entire world differently afterwards. That's what this game can be. For Miami, this is a chance to hit the reset button for them a little bit. And they've won their last, they've won every game they've played. The last 2 games they've won, they are a little bit concerning the way they've played. Like the Virginia Tech win on Friday night, okay, you say it's a tough spot. Cal across the country, late kick. It was like a 10 o'clock kick, 10:30 or something, 10:15 kick local if you're Miami. Okay, you excuse the poor starts and you find a way to win. It is what it is. But like if you play the way you played early against both those teams on the road at Louisville, like we're running out of excuses to be made for Miami here. So, with that being said, on the road, ACC opponent, noon kick, go do what good teams do, which is when you're a favorite on the road, you go kick the ever-loving stuff out of somebody. Because Miami, on a roster level, is good enough to do that. Now, will they? Remains to be seen. Here's my question. Can Louisville do something on defense now? Honestly, the spread surprises me a little bit that it's not larger in favor of Miami. Miami, what they've done their last couple of contests probably lends itself to that number. But, if I'm Cam Ward, I am licking my chops, dude. Like this is just like an all-you-can-eat kind of buffet. Nick Brake goes to a Chinese buffet at times on a Friday. This is that for Cam Ward, all right? Like whatever you want, it's there. In the pass game, they're allowing nearly 250 yards a game. Now, with that being said, wouldn't it surprise me if we saw some Jack Harlow, Louisville Cardinal magic here, but I think it's going to take that kind of effort to be able to stop Miami offensively. Because Miami, if you've kept any track of what Cam Ward has done to this point in the year, he's in that Heisman conversation for a reason. He has put a teach tape together in terms of offensive football the last two second halves he's played. If Miami starts fast and Louisville looks how they've looked the last couple of weeks defensively, they're going to get their stuff kicked in. All right? Make no mistake about it. Now, here's a question now on Miami's side. Where's the gas tank at for them? I'm not talking like literally, like where's it located. I'm talking about like what level of fuel do they have in the tank? Because we've seen so often teams will roll in after a couple of close wins, and for what, like this is Notre Dame a season ago, went to Louisville, and they just didn't have that extra gear. Looked like they were emotionally drained. Now, they had beat better teams than Louisville the weeks before, but they did not have their best to play, and I don't know how to describe it other than like you're running out of gas. That's the way it feels. Miami got the bye week, okay, but did they use that bye week to kind of refill on the emotional gas or the physical gas? Whatever they need to be able to play their best football, it hasn't been there in the first half against these last two contests. Is it there in this game? Did those last two games light a fire under them and propel them, or did it wear them out, cause them to lose fuel, and things get interesting? Now, I will say this. As much as we dunk on Louisville and their pass defense, their pass game is nice. Tyler Shuck, God bless him, playing his 7th year of college football. They are hucking it downfield. Like Brahms' squad is just missile launching, 9.1 yards a pass. Miami's defense has been good. They've also allowed a couple of explosives. Like Cal had 11 completions and darn near 300 yards. You do the math on that, okay? They've allowed some explosives here. So if they want to shore that up, okay, vibes are high, and Miami probably covers that spread with ease. If not, though, if what we just mentioned about Miami being a little bit lethargic, being worn out, being run down emotionally, and they're just kind of feeling relief instead of joy when they win, that could be a bad thing for Miami, and that could allow Louisville to hang around and make this thing very, very interesting. So here's what I think we see. I think it is extremely possible that what we see on paper does not translate, right? Like that would be right in line with what college football has been this year. Hey, we think we know the matchups. We got Cam Ward on this side and the Louisville pass defense over here, and like it is what it is. You go there on a noon kick, you're on the road, and you end up dropping that game. That could happen. That would not wildly surprise me. However, I think what makes Miami different this year than past years is the buy-in level from the locker room. It is a player-led culture. I believe that. And player-led culture, in spots where you have letdowns the last couple of weeks, usually you do a really good job of flipping that on its head, playing your best ball after good weeks of practice, off a bye week, got a chance to get rested, get the sleep, the circadian rhythm back into motion there. First mention of circadian rhythm on the show, so shouts to them. I think Cam Ward is unhappy with the way the last few games have gone. I don't think there's any like, oh, great, we won. I think it's more so, hey, we are way better than this. And we've seen Miami. They are better than the way they've played those last couple of games. In the second half of both the Va-Tech and the Cal game more specifically, they have been a force. So I think that we see a sense of urgency from them. I think Miami rolls out, noon kick, makes a statement. Cam Ward adds another line to his Heisman resume with a nice little stat sheet stuffer against the Cards. I think Miami wins. I think Miami covers. And I think that we have the optics around the Canes stabilized a little bit coming off of this one in ACC play. Here's a little Easter egg for you for those that are tuned in. We are working on getting a few player interviews for you. We did coach interviews during the offseason. Those were phenomenal. We appreciate all their time. Working on hearing from some of these high-profile players across the college football landscape. I say that after we just talked about Miami and their game against Louisville. So pick that apart as you wish. Got another prediction to get to you here in just a second, but I want to just touch on what Dan Lanning did and admitted to doing in the Ohio State game. So let's reset the table here. Ohio State, is driving for a field goal. Time is of the essence. Ohio State field goal obviously will win the football game. Oregon gets called for having 12 men on the field. So as that happens, okay, the play happens, 12 men, whatever, time goes off the clock with those 12 men on the field during that penalty. Also, it's worth noting, when you have 12 men on the field, you're probably in good shape defensively. It is what it is. So that play happens. Ryan Day sees it. The refs see it. Oregon gets flagged for it. But again, the time that is so precious here goes off the clock. So Dan Lanning was asked about that in his postgame, or not his postgame, in his weekly press conference. I believe it was yesterday. And he says, yeah, it's a situation we practice. You saw the result. Essentially like, hey, you got me. Yeah, we had 12 men on the field. Yes, it was strategic. And yes, it benefited us. So let's kind of get aligned on what this was. 1, it worked. 2, it was a gutsy play. 3, it was aggressive by Dan Lanning. And guess what? Dan Lanning is the same guy that for the better part of the last, I don't know how many weeks, I guess not years, but going back to the Washington game, people were just, going after Dan Lanning for what he wasn't as a game day coach. And then he makes a chess move like this with 12 men on the field that changes the end of the game against Ohio State. Clearly had Ohio State shook. The game ended how it did with Ohio State running out of time. Also in this game, Dan Lanning kicks a laser onside kick at someone's head. Not him personally, but calls a laser onside kick at the front man for Ohio State. Risky move. Like, this is who he's always been. This is who he was last year in the Washington game, going forward on 4th down. They don't get it, so everyone goes, oh, he's a bad game day coach. He was never a bad game day coach. He's betting on his players. And one that impacts a locker room in a certain way where you say, okay, coach believes in us enough to call these kind of things that are unorthodox, but quite frankly, he's betting on us to get the job done. They don't get it done last year, and everyone just wants his head. It works this year in a big spot in front of everyone. They say, man, gutsy call. Good for Dan Lanning. Man, he's just a step ahead of everyone. No. You don't get to say that after last year you just were ready to tar and feather the guy. That's not how this works. Not how this works. So Dan Lanning, I think, absolutely deserves a ton of credit for what he did in that game, and I just want to make sure we're on the same page. This is who he has always been. It's who he was in the loss against Washington. It's who he was in a win against Ohio State, and he deserves his flowers and then some for that spot. So just know we've been keeping receipts. We've been keeping receipts on that whole situation. Let it be known. Let it be known. One more prediction for you here, and this is a good one, man. This could very well end up being the most entertaining game of the whole Saturday. The battle for the boot. LSU, 2.5-point favorites, going to Fayetteville, Arkansas, 7 Eastern, ESPN Razorback Stadium. This is fascinating for me, for both sides of this. Arkansas coming off a bye, but a huge win over Tennessee the week before. LSU coming off of a massive win over Ole Miss in Baton Rouge. We talk about the emotional gas tank, the competitive gas tank. Where are both these teams at? For Arkansas, did you hit the reset button over the bye week, or did you enjoy everyone telling you how good you were and how great it was you beat Tennessee to where you roll out a little bit lackadaisical against LSU? For LSU, great win at home. You have Death Valley stormed the field. That was massive. However, we've seen many a team have a big win, then have a big letdown, and lose a game they're not supposed to lose. Vegas is telling you LSU should win this football game by 2.5 points. Arkansas might be the best 4-2 team in America right now. They have a certain ain't-no-telling factor to them, in my opinion. The defense, you have questions about them. There's no way around it, but they've been massively opportunistic. And then Taylon Green, I am going to go ahead and assume he plays in this football game. That is what the tea leaves are kind of pointing towards, if you will, when it comes to his status for this game. He is good enough, I think, paired with that defense, to make any game interesting the rest of the way on their schedule, this game included. For LSU, they have proven now a couple of things. They are a gritty football team, and they trust their quarterback. We've seen them now in multiple spots bounce back, fight hard from a deficit, and find a way to win the football game. South Carolina on the road, they're down, find a way to come back. Ole Miss last week at home, fight, force overtime, find a way to come back. And they believe in Garrett Nussmeier, like I just said. They threw the ball over 50 times against Ole Miss. The most important play that I saw was outside of the game-winning touchdown, where they also, surprise, surprise, said Nuss, throw it to Lacey, touchdown, okay, game blouses. But the play to force overtime, 4th and 5, I've said this now multiple times. They have a chance for Ole Miss to win the football game on that play. You turn it over, take a knee, get out of there. 4th and 5, what do you call? Slants? Hitches to the sticks? No, you call verts because you want your gumbo gunslinger to sling it. He does, throws a touchdown, tie game, you go to overtime, you win the football game. So what are the keys in this football game? What's the thing we're watching here most closely? Again, I'm assuming Taylen Green is ready to go. How does LSU play him when it comes to what he does with his legs? That's what we need to talk about here, because as good as LSU was last week, getting after Jackson Dart, stacking him multiple times, even with the loss of yards he had factored into him running the football, he still had 27 yards on the ground. I don't know how the sack stats shake out necessarily, but I have to believe if you subtract the sacks from that, he probably had something closer to the range of 35, 40 yards. They did some damage on the ground with the quarterback. Taylen Green is a much more dynamic athlete than Jackson Dart is. He's also, I think, a much more dynamic athlete than Lawrence Sellers is. Lawrence Sellers, now he can go, but Taylen Green can really hurt you if you don't play the design quarterback run effectively and the ad-lib plays effectively. Because Taylen Green, yes, he hurts you on the design quarterback run, but I think where Arkansas has really thrived this year is those second play explosives. You rush the passer, you have it dialed up, you think you're getting home, he steps aside, scrambles left, throws right, touchdown. Ask A&M about that, even though A&M won that football game. Ask LSU about that, even though, or not LSU. Ask Auburn about that. Other Tigers got them all crisscrossed. And Arkansas did win that football game, in large part because of plays like that. So can Arkansas have enough plays outside of the ad-lib plays to be able to make those the maximizer and the edge for them in this football game? Because LSU, I think, has a chance now to rush the passer at a high level. But again, if you don't get home, you get to that second play, things get very, very intriguing. I think for Arkansas in this football game, the question offensively isn't even just can you have explosives. I think it's also can you play the same style that you did against Tennessee offensively. Because in that game now, as good as your defense played, and they played phenomenal, a big reason why they played well is they were off the field quite a bit. I mean, Arkansas won the Tennessee game with a time of possession of 35 minutes. I think you'd like to have a similar number against LSU. Because as good as your defense has played at times, I think they're also pretty gettable. And LSU, I think, on the perimeter has a lot of weapons that you don't want to have extra time on the field to try and hurt you. All right? I like this matchup for LSU's offense. I really do. I think Arkansas's secondary, their numbers are a little bit skewed because they have that, 700 interception game on their resume against Auburn. But I think matchup-wise, I like Kyron Lacy. I like Anderson. I like a lot of the playmakers for LSU to go win. I like Garrett Nussmeier now to go deal the pill. Arkansas is allowing 230-plus yards a game through the air. It's not great. It's not great. I don't know that it cuts it in this game. So can you get to Garrett Nussmeier and affect him? More importantly, can you keep your offense on the field, even if you're not having explosive after explosive, to be able to make that LSU offense that's really potent have to watch? So the first game, I think, is a bit of a punchline for LSU early on in the year. Like the Florida State game last year, the USC game this year, everyone just says, oh, man, Brian Kelly, is he the right guy? LSU this, LSU that, they're not that good. And then every year, it seems like, as unfortunate as the start is, they eventually, right around this time, start to round into form, start to look like a Brian Kelly coached football team, start to play their best football, and you're like, okay, LSU could be a problem here. I think this game has huge entertainment value. I think when you look at Taylen Green and the question marks around his health, that's a little bit too rich for me to take Arkansas. The spot makes me very worried for LSU. Again, 2.5 points going on the road after a massively emotional win, but I think they handle it well. I think that the quantity of weapons for LSU on the perimeter is a difference. I think that the front seven and the way they have started to play now the last couple of weeks, most notably the Ole Miss game, is the difference. I think LSU wins the football game. I think they cover. I think that they end up ultimately obviously winning and protecting the cover with that 2.5-point spread. We will take LSU to win this football game. I'll take them 31-21 in Fayetteville. Again, that might be, do not be surprised if you tune in to, I guess it would be the late night game is Texas, not late night, but the The primetime game is Texas, Georgia, and you're keeping an eye on the ticker, and you're like, oh my gosh, throw the quad box on. Get the extra TV out. We got to make sure we keep tabs on Arkansas LSU because it could be that kind of game in the battle of the boot. Battle for the boot. Hey, the hard count brought to you by our friends over at Roback. Now, Roback, it's hoodie season, y'all. I stepped outside this morning in Nashville, Tennessee, and it wasn't quite frosty windshield season just yet, but we are approaching very closely. It was 40. I think right now it's something like 60. If you're anywhere in the temperature range that we are right now, you need a hoodie that's going to take care of you. Roback, I'm telling y'all, I wear a Roback hoodie just about every single day into the office, whether I'm indoors or outdoors. Just it's got that kind of versatility. Also, game day polos. I know a lot of y'all still have some nice weather. Maximize that with the polos. They got some breathability to them. They look good. They feel good. Also, it's got some joggers to take care of you. So got some everyday shorts if you're still feeling like wearing some shorts in this weather. The bottom line here is Roback is taking care of you in every single part of the year. But with the hoodies now, they are thriving, they're rolling, and they want to take care of you. So use code JD at roback.com for a generous 20% off for all new customers. Again, that's spelled RHOBACK.com, 20% off. Performance polos, shorts, hoodies, joggers. Just telling y'all, man, code JD, no periods in there, just those two letters, get you 20% off for that first purchase. Hey, I appreciate y'all being dialed in, man. I appreciate y'all making this show what it is. Week 8. Week 8, 2/3 of the way to the regular season. How depressing is that? Makes me a little bit sad, but obviously we do this show year-round, so we're college football never stops around here, but we are just savoring everything this season has. We appreciate y'all doing the same. We appreciate y'all being subscribed. Big week now. All right, we got the clickbait defense installed. We got our predictions out there. Tomorrow, hotel playoff. Going into week 8 of the college football season. Who's in the penthouse? Who's in the lobby? We'll talk about all that. A lot of movement. We'll expect more movement going forward. But, man, we appreciate y'all making this show what it is. For Nick Brake on the ones and twos, for myself, J.D. Piquel, we appreciate y'all. We love y'all. We're going to keep this party rolling, and we will see y'all next time.